Now we're live.
Now we're live, which means I cannot talk about the bullshittery that was before.
What do you mean? This is an explicit show. We can say whatever we want.
We could say whatever we want. It may be explicit. I do not want to get canceled.
That's true.
What the hell happened to your neck? Did you get choked out?
I was scratching it there and I got sensitive skin. Mm-hmm.
That's not a scratching rash. That's you were bitten by a radioactive spider, and you're gonna start ejaculating thread silk. Thread silk.
Fly, Web. Up and away, Web.
How awkward would that be if it were like literate, like just like what's an animal that releases shit from a thorax? Like I don't know. It's like a weird superpower. It's all like, what are you? It's all like, what's your superpower? I shit like a wombat. What? I shit cubes. You what? I literally shit bricks.
This is my superpower.
This is my superpower.
Like, I don't know what to tell you. You know?
Do you know that wombats shit 100 times a day?
Really?
They shit 100 times a day.
The more you know.
The more you
Man, you got to come in with these random trivial pieces of information.
I was listening to a podcast on my way back from the gym yesterday, and it was about two things. It was one, 80% of people only breathe through one nostril at a time. Now, that doesn't mean air. It means like there are this is not this is just the tip of the iceberg of your nose. Like the actual plumbing of your nose goes all the way back to the back of the ear and shit. So 80% of people only breathe through one nostril at a time, and it changes throughout the day. Like you might wake up as a left breather, and then by lunch you're a right breather. And there is a whole evolutionary reason for it. Especially during the winter. Because the purpose of your nose and then all the plumbing is to moisten the air. Your lungs like things to be at like 97 degrees. So it's to warm up the air and to add moisture to it as it moves. And that's just a lot of work to do for one nostril. So your body, to save energy, will swap in between the dominant nostrils. Uh-huh. Crazy as shit. And then literally the next thing in this podcast, same episode, wombat shit.
What was the podcast about? Like what did they?
Well, okay, so
random
shout out to Every Little Thing. Every Little Thing is one of my favorite podcasts. The entire concept of the podcast is just like things that have surprisingly complicated explanations.
I like that. I feel like there's like a lot of stuff that is very complicated to explain.
Yes.
That's
So the whole idea is like a listener or somebody calls in and leaves like a message is like, hey, this happened and I'm wondering why. And they call up like some weird scientist who studies wombat shit, right? And
they're just like going on their rant, and these guys are like, uh-huh.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable.
That's awesome.
What are you gonna do?
Apparently, shit 100 times a day.
Shit 100 times a day, and they're cubes.
They specifically like perfect cubes.
Yes, like perfect cubes. Here, I'm dead serious. Here, look.
I need to know.
Hey, Google wombat poo.
I don't know what a wombat looks like.
I want images. Hey, show me a picture of wombat poop.
Here are some pictures that match.
Oh, I'm not asking for
Well, what's a wombat look like?
Show me a picture. Oh my God, wombats are the cutest little thing. Here. Is this technically the pre-stream? I don't even know anymore.
It's the stream, whatever we're streaming.
They're like obese toddlers with the face of a teddy bear, like a wombat.
Oh,
they're fucking adorable.
Okay,
they're fucking adorable. Okay, wombat poo. Okay, here you go. Look at this shit. They shit squares.
Oh my God.
They shit squares.
It almost looks good.
100 times a day.
Like, do they shit in piles, or is it like as they're walking, they're just taking
It's like
shits?
one shit at a time. Okay.
Do they
so,
stop and shit?
Yeah,
Or they
so
walk and
evolutionarily
shit?
speaking, so you know how your dogs mark territory by pissing? They mark territory by shitting. And so these are indigenous to Australia in the brushlands. So there really aren't any trees or anything. So they mark territory on like cut stumps and like rocks and stuff. And over time, you know, the squarer the poo, the less likely it was to roll off the rock.
So square shape to the poop.
Yeah, square shape to the poop. Now, their intestine and butthole are both round. So the scientist was trying to
Kindergarten lied. They said circle goes in circle. Square goes in square.
We are both smooth-brained gym rats. So we didn't put the circle in the square. We didn't put the circle in circle. We put the circle in the square and then went and then just like
it fit now.
See?
It
You get
fit
it.
now.
It fit. In any case, so the question he was trying to answer is how does a round butthole and a round intestine result in square shit?
Man, I mean, that's fascinating. That's all I can say about that. That's
right?
Pretty fucking fascinating.
But my favorite thing about that is because I know how science works, is in order to get funding for anything, you have to fill out a grant. And usually, like anybody who gives out grants, I don't care if it's the National Science Foundation, you have to somehow make it worthwhile, right? Like this, it seems innocuous or it seems weird, but in reality, once we learn this, it'll open up. Hello. It will open up the.
What happened?
I don't know. It will open up the opportunity to learn about this, which can help us develop medicine or defense or bombs or whatever. I can't imagine the person who actually gave money to some scientists trying to study wombat shit.
Shit.
Like, what did you have to write to fill out? And, like, what are the more important... Like, I don't know.
I just was setting up the remote. But hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to... Well, I guess I should hit the stream intro, shouldn't I?
You know what? Let's get it started. Hit the stream intro. Let's go.
That's what I was looking
Pre-stream
for.
over. Pre-stream over. Let's go to the actual stream. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Ooh. Or the music that's just over there. We're making it work. Boing. All right, we're good. Oh, there it is. Bros and brolettes.
Vikings and Valkyries.
Welcome to Iron Theory.
A podcast about fitness, life, and everything in between.
Rachel, where are the other drugs going?
Batman.
I'm Batman.
We gotta just kind of like off the cuff every time.
We gotta off
just
the
gotta,
cuff
like,
the intro every time.
It's not our names anymore. Like whoever doesn't know our name, fuck it. We're different people every week now.
Yep, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and they just have to accept that, and if they don't, I will identify.
Did you see that
as a
podcast
problem.
with Batman and Rachel? No, you know what? I did see a podcast with, Mr. Rogers and Barney.
Here, I don't know what here. Addie Pose and Cardi B.
There you go.
And Dr. Valkyrie Brodington. See references only viewers of last week's episode would know
Man.
about. Speaking of last week's episode, where can our listeners listen to all our other episodes of this podcast, Chris?
All of our other episodes, if you do not catch the live stream, can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, essentially all the major platforms you can find us. So you just type in Iron Theory. It should pop right up. Whatever podcast platform pops up, we're probably on it. So.
Absolutely. Give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us a like, give us a 5-star review.
5-star
because
review,
you
share.
love us. You love us. You know you do.
You Apple users, yep.
Even
Leave us that review.
even if this is your first time, you already love us.
Yes.
It's okay to admit it. Come
You
on
know
now.
it. You
We're
know it.
infectious.
Yes.
Speaking of loving.
Oh.
Oh.
I don't know where this is going, but
I don't know either. I was thinking like once I say it, I would be able to segue, but I don't.
Speaking of
Have you
loving.
ever
loved yourself?
Have you ever?
Have you ever loved yourself
We're
so much? you
we're
took
in the
care of
gym
your
because we
body?
hate ourselves. I don't think there is.
I don't know, man. Like, there are those days where it's like, man, I'm just gonna beat you into submission, guy in the mirror. You're gonna eat this, fucking wrap these weights. Fuck you. And then there's those days where I'm like, oh yeah, you sexy devil, you can do this. You're doing these reps. So I don't know. It really depends.
On what days do you stare yourself in the gym mirror and call yourself, "Come on, sexy devil"?
You know what? Today was that day. I did some legs today. I had my Team No Calves shirt on.
Yeah.
By Omar Isif and his
Yep.
clothing line.
Yep.
My short shorts I'm wearing right now.
Your short shorts.
And I was just like, okay, yeah, we squatting. We got it.
Dear God, we need to go outside. Like, I didn't notice it until you just pointed it, but like, you are pasty right now. We need to go out.
We need sun.
Yeah.
We're white. We're too white.
We are like there is white and then there is like alabaster and we're really reaching
Borderline.
into the school glue side of
Elmer. Fucking Elmer's
platform.
glue. Casper. Fucking Doughboy. White.
Dear God. But the reason for today's episode is to discuss recovery. And, we know when you have a damn good workout, you're sore, you've been beaten up, you've torn your body. Literally, I mean, that's the idea of hypertrophy, right? You're tearing your muscles apart.
So I could definitely relate to that. But even like when you're a strength athlete like yourself, who's crushing these heavier weights, right? You're within 70, 80, 90% of your 1 rep max is going for PRs. Those moments also need time where you do need to recover. But today's podcast, because there was an episode like a while back with Matt that we talked about recovery tools specifically, but I think it's going to be an interesting one because I didn't have your perspective at that time on recovery and what essentially is not recovery, or if we're actually, do we need recovery? Are we like too scared to, push yourself?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I was inspired to give you this idea because Alan Thrall just released a video on on overtraining and recovery just like 2 or 3 days ago.
I watched most of it, but that was an interesting take. I think when it came to what is recovery, or his point was more that a lot of people ease off the pedal because they're a little sore and they feel like because there's this buzzword, using the word recovery. You see it on social media, Instagram. There's a lot of products that are being sold that claim recovery, right? So it's just always in your face. Because that's just the industry we're in.
And it's a massive industry. I mean, even if you go to like a vitamin shop or GNC's bankrupt, right? I don't think they exist anymore.
I don't know.
I think GNC,
there's one not too far from here, actually.
You go to one of these like stores, and there's literally an entire section. Like there is your pre-workout, your intra-workout, and your recovery. Are you trying to?
I'm trying. Hopefully I don't knock this shit over again.
Are you trying to sit like me?
Man, we got the perfect... I don't know what I did today, but we got the perfect angle on this now. We're just like before I was like completely off.
This is a live podcast, so we don't cut anything out. So right now what you're seeing is...
Oh my God, my shit.
To give viewers some background here, I sit... Indian style, half lotus. I don't know what you call it all the time. I've been sitting like this my entire life.
I remember.
And I just I don't need anything. Like this is my body just bends this way.
This is a great glute stretch actually. I feel pretty good in my hips.
Meanwhile, Chris over here needs to like fucking pull his leg over.
There's this leg of the fucking table, and I'm just trying to like just work around it. But anywho.
Yeah. So we were talking about, and there's an entire, it's an industry.
I mean, you got your vibration technology.
Bullshit.
The latest one is the electromagnetic pulse stuff I'm seeing pop up a bit more.
Oh, the TENS meters.
Yep.
Yeah, but those actually,
there's benefit
Yeah.
to that. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying we're not saying that
Yeah.
all the products are bullshit, because
Right.
there's a lot of products that work, foam rollers and such. But there are, the magic pills and, well, I guess I don't know. I guess we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
a lot of products.
So here's where I want to make a little bit of a distinction, because in my world there really truly is like when we say recovery, I'm usually referring to two things in completely different contexts. And the context that I think most people think about in terms of recovery is after your workout, right? You're done.
Yeah.
But I also need to think about recovery as in between my sets, right? Because it's a matter, it's a lot to think about when you're like, okay, how much glycogen do I feel like I've got left, right? Like in my head, recovery during your workout is just as important as recovery after your workout. Because when you're a strength athlete and you're going for heavy sets, you want to make sure that when you work into your second or third or fourth set, that you are moving the weight as efficiently as the first time.
Right.
So that's kind of why, and I know you poke jokes at me, and I poke jokes at you too about taking long rest sets, when in reality, all I'm doing is I'm waiting until I feel like I can move the weight efficiently, safely, again and again and again and again.
I mean,
and again.
I poke fun, and that's the meme or whatever, but I would say that there's plenty of validity to that, because especially when you're dealing with heavier loads, like if somebody's moving a weight that is, I would say, safer, easier to control for a lot more reps, because nobody's going to be, unless you're a genetic freak or really, really strong, depending on the individual, like whatever the exercise is, if you only manage 5 reps or less, and that's all you got, then you need that recovery, between sets, that longer rest period to attempt to do that again, because, if you're dealing with way more of a load, then something that's like, I could 20 rep this, or 15 or whatever, 10, 12. Right. So longer rest periods for sure.
And even if we can, like, I'm sure I can sit there and I can put 135 pounds on the bar and rep it out ad nauseum.
Sure.
But that would take away from my goal, right? At that point, I'm actually inducing hypertrophy. More hypertrophy than otherwise. All I'm doing is just depleting more glycogen. I'm setting myself up for potential injury. The exhaustion is not the goal, right? Well, for my side of training, right?
Yeah.
Training to exhaust the muscle is not exactly your primary goal. So I have to think about recovery in between my sets quite strong. And a lot of that is really, and you'll notice this is where feeling is everything, right? If you feel like you're recovered, I'm going to say you're recovered, right? And it's a mental thing. As much as it's a physiological thing, recovery is very much a mental. Do you feel like you've recovered? And that's more than enough. So I don't know. Sometimes a rest set is 60 seconds. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. I don't know. Do I feel like I'm ready to go again?
Right. Like, for instance, I did legs 2 days ago, and then I did it again today, because I do like 2 touch-up days now, where I'll do, more specific, like, okay, my legs are maybe lagging. I'm going to do another leg-specific day. I'm like, okay, my chest is lagging. This week I'll do, usually legs is always there on that next day after the split for like a touch-up, and then I'll also do some kind of push day typically now, unless I'm like, all right, fuck it, we'll switch it and do a pull day next week or whatever. But I mean, like, my legs are still sore from Thursday when I was going in for it today, but my strength didn't deplete. So I mean, as I was moving, that lactic acid was already pretty much gone, which is another thing. I guess this is a pretty good segue, I would say, for like, when you feel sore. Like how much time do you have to really take off when you feel sore? Because a lot of newbies are going to feel like when they're sore, like, oh shit, I shouldn't push anything. I shouldn't actually work that muscle out or whatever, I feel like it comes down to your performance, because my strength didn't deplete today. When I was doing similar exercise, I didn't feel like I was doing any more poorly, than I did last time. I felt like I was pretty much at the same performance. So,
Yeah. And you do bring up an interesting point, especially about newbies and this whole idea of you just feeling sore. If you're sore, does that mean you're not recovered? I mean, and in the context of can you go again and perform at the level you want to perform? And I think that's an interesting point because a lot of newbies will be like, no, I'm sore, that I'm gonna wait it out.
Just think about like when I get
shouldn't.
newbies under my wing, and they start exercising, and that next day where they do feel like extremely sore, where feel like they got hit by a train, you know, they feel like, yeah, I can't freaking work out for like a week or whatever. Even though we'll do, you know, stuff that's basic, but you know the body's adapting. So if you've never exercised ever, the most basic stuff is going to make that person very sore.
Very true.
In order to adapt.
But so let's actually talk about let's start with you. What do you or should I start? I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
I'm ready to go because I have my big thing is recovery is not something that happens passively. Recovery is something you do. It's an action. It's something that you do. You do recovery. Recovery doesn't happen to you. You happen to recovery.
Because, I mean, I feel like that's the case even when people think about something that maybe is more passive, like sleeping, but we are still actively sleeping. We are making the decision to, I'm going to go to bed early to get a full 8 hours or whatever, you know?
And actually, so you bring up a good point. Biologically, I mean, this is, and we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of bullshit about recovery. Two things, not bullshit, absolutely pivotal. Things don't happen without it, and that's sleep and food. Yep. Sleep and nutrition, sleep and nutrition, sleep and nutrition. We've beaten this. I mean, I think like every single episode has been something about sleep and nutrition.
Hey man, if it's true, we're gonna keep saying it.
Yeah. If you don't have that, you are not recovering optimally.
Yeah.
But that's not what this episode is about.
No.
In this episode is about what do you do for recovery, the actual action that is recovery.
Yep. Well, I guess, do we want to say, like, as far as, like, an injury, if somebody's recovering, or more specifically, you know, I had a pretty heavy set, and I feel pretty, you know, that session was, you know, intense.
Let's just do general recovery. I don't want to injury. That's a whole nother bag of,
True.
A whole nother thing, right? I mean, we can probably get into it briefly at the end, but I want to stick with just, like, actual recovery that we do on a regular basis because of a workout.
I mean, I've been incorporating a lot of bands for recovery work. So I'll do, for instance, today, because of how my leg day was 2 days ago, I made sure that nothing, especially my hips, were tight, and then making sure, you know, glutes were working because I know my right glute is weaker. I know it is because I still do the hip shift to the left when I do a heavier squat. So that's something I've been actively doing, but I do active recovery stuff, and like people who take like a full rest day instead of doing something that will, you know, benefit them, you know, in the gym and still make them move. Like if you're moving and doing dynamic movements for recovery, you know, different stretches, using foam rolls, using bands and stuff like that, you're still moving, so that's better than sitting around doing jack shit.
How do you feel the bands have helped in your recovery?
I would say a lot, because I've been doing way more research now, you know, if people, more specifically for my clients and just for my own knowledge, you know, when people start feeling certain kinds of pains or like just little twinges. I'm not saying like full on injuries, but you know, like people feel a little bit of a tweak in their knee. You know, what are the causations of that? You know, usually it's going to be somewhere in the ankle or in the hips. You know, typically there's some kind of issue going on there where it's not, your knee's not tracking. And there was an analogy I heard, you know, the knee's like on a train track. So once that little thing, the pad that's across this, like, it's a moving part, moves and starts to learn to go a different way and tracks a different way, you're going to start feeling maybe an impingement. So bands, you know, getting like band work done to get proper flexion in my ankles, even if like my flexion is good, but it actually does feel like it gets better before I jump into my sets. And then same thing with the hips. I love bands. Big fan.
Yeah, and I see you work with bands. In the few times that we actually work out together, I see you use bands all the time, and I've started incorporating a lot more bands. But I'm very entertained by the approach you take, because part of your recovery is prehabbing is what I like to call it, instead of rehabbing, right?
Yeah.
Where something feels off, so after a workout you work on it, which is very much what I do.
Yeah.
You're prehabbing. You're like saying, okay, I know that this is an ongoing issue for me, so before I even jump into my workout, I am going to prevent the need for excessive amounts of recovery work by prehabbing, by sort of preempting my body to do a certain thing. And I think that's a really smart approach too, where recovery is a process. It's an ongoing process that is always continuing, and perhaps starting with some recovery work even before your workout might be beneficial.
Especially just for preventative measures. Even if I don't feel any initial pain, like I'm not feeling pain when my hip shifts when I come up from the squat in like a heavy, squat, but just doing that, because I'm such a perfectionist when it comes to my technique. If I see myself doing that, I don't want to do that, because that means something is not working correctly. There's an imbalance somewhere, and I want to make sure everything's balanced.
Yeah.
So that's why I will spend time preventative actions for that stuff is also very good, and you could definitely call that recovery.
One thing that I've always been a fan of, in terms of recovery to me, is like, how do I make sure that my body is recovering, my muscles are recovering, my ligaments aren't fucking exploding, right? Is whenever I'm sore in an area, and I get mad DOMs in the legs. I don't really get DOMs anywhere else, but I get mad DOMs in the legs.
My ass is like sore as fuck from Thursday. Oh my god, it was just very, very, very intense soreness in my ass.
Fully understand. I need to move. If I don't move, my recovery slows down and I'm sore for longer. My two favorite things that I do for recovery is walking and biking. Now, I don't mean like a 50-mile actual bike ride to exercise. I mean a bike ride just to get your heart rate up a little bit, get blood get blood to all your muscles and stuff, or just walking. And I know that there are so many strength athletes right now who just keep touting the benefits of walking. I know that Greg does it, Coach Greg.
He's big on biking. I mean, like he's like, he does Zwift like every fucking day because they're on quarantine in Canada, so they're definitely. He's on that bike,
Yeah,
so that's pretty
cool. What Mark Bell talks about walking all the time, just moving and getting your blood flowing, right? I mean, just like your muscles are literally recovering, and they need nutrients. They need protein, which travels through your bloodstream. They need amino acids, which travels through your bloodstream. They need that stuff. And anything that increases your blood circulation, which is movement, actually walking.
Yeah,
if your heart rate's up, your blood's moving faster.
I mean, we could make the argument is like just taking a full rest day where you're literally just lounging around. You are not recovering as properly.
No, you're not.
As somebody who at least goes to the gym and walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes to an hour or whatever it is. Whatever, but it has to come down to something that person enjoys to do. So that way that it is more of a productive recovery process than just sitting around taking a full day off and then just saying fuck all because it's recovery rest day or whatever. So I mean, exactly like you mentioned, blood flow happening as you're moving, and then your heart rate's obviously going up, so there's more circulation, so you're getting those nutrients faster into those muscles that are sore, so that's also pushing out all that lactic acid, right?
And I think everybody knows this, but they just don't want to admit it. They're like, oh, I'm gonna take a rest day to recover some more, but you don't. When have you ever taken a break and you've come back to the gym magically better?
Where do you think
it doesn't work that way?
Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think?
No idea
that people, just take the day off. I guess there must be just something I don't know. It might not necessarily stem from fitness, but it's like, okay, well, I'm doing a lot of physical labor, so I guess I better take just rest as in do nothing.
Right.
So I don't know what that necessarily stems from.
Well, I mean, it's
but-
fine, and I get it. There are days where you're just not gonna do stuff, and that's fine. Like, you whatever, we're not here to hark on go hard every day or do something every day. No, I get it. Some days you just need to, fuck off for a bit. But I'm talking about the people who think that just like staying at home and watching TV is somehow gonna magically make the soreness in their quad go away. Mm-hmm. This has all happened to us. Like, have you ever been going great at the gym and then a vacation comes, you're fully rested, right? You've been at the beach, you've been eating a bunch of food, it's you would imagine you're fully recovered. You haven't done too much for an entire week, you've been resting up, and you come back to the gym, and what happens after a week of just not doing shit?
Weights definitely feel heavier.
But
Like,
look at that. You spent a week. You're recovered.
Right. Well, I feel like again, that's something that needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's very goal dependent. So let's also mention that okay, fine, the weights are heavier, but maybe somebody won't care. But in the case of somebody who is a strength athlete, that sucks. You know, because it's like, okay, well, I'm lifting. It doesn't feel as good as it did last week when I did the same exercise. So, So, I mean, do you think, is that an indicator for you as a strength athlete that when you feel weights getting heavier, even though you've done them before, is that an indication for you to ease off somehow on the intensity of the way you train?
No. If I get really mad when weights that I hit at the regular feel heavy. Mm-hmm. I get really, really pissy about it. And the thing is, oh my God, strength training is such a fickle monster. Because you can feel wonderful and for no reason, and this happens all the damn time to me, the two lifts that have, squats are generally very stable for me. Like, I can, a squat's a squat and a bench is a bench. Like, I know my weights there, and they don't vary by too much. If they're going up, they're going up. But whatever. The two things that vary the most for me is overhead press and deadlift. Mm-hmm. On some days, a 430-pound deadlift skyrockets. And there's other days where it's just a fucking grinder. And the same thing with overhead press. There are some days where, 100 something, whatever, what's the heaviest I ever, like 150? A 150-pound press, it goes up, yay, easy. And then literally the next week, it's just like, I can't get it even off my collarbone.
I think
it's obnoxious.
Which feel like I was listening to that Alan Thrall video, and he was saying essentially, it just is like that sometimes, but it's by no means, but again, he was also mentioning that, if you're injured and if you're in pain and there's a progressive pain and stuff like that, that's different. That needs to be addressed in some way, right? But for most people, if we're just talking general population, like people who are going into the gym and just working out, and they're feeling sore, and they're making the excuse of okay, I'm sore, so I guess I'll take a full day off. But yeah, when it comes down to having an off day, everybody has that off day. Yeah. I feel like it's a spectrum. It's something that just kind of it flows, but you want to make sure that there is a bit more net positive than negative.
Yeah, but to me, I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not I'm recovered. At this point, I've just decided that deadlift and overhead press are they're inconsistent and they're not real, and nobody gives a shit. And you just train what feels heavy that day, and if you get through it, you get through it, and if you don't, at
that point,
usually what you got to do.
Usually, what I would say at that point is maybe just training whichever muscle that it might be that's lagging, in order for you not to pull that weight or push that overhead or whatever. Or, like I did a T-spine mobility thing, with my shoulders tracking. And a lot of overhead stuff did feel a little better after I warmed up on like a roller. So I mean, maybe like small little stuff like that might actually make the lift better than the next time. So, but I wouldn't say it's like, yeah, I guess fuck it, I'm just not gonna lift it.
Well, and that's a quick aside, there are two different ways to look at training, and that's looking at like prescribed sets and weights. So you're doing a certain percentage of your 1 rep max. And a lot of strength programming kind of looks like that. You're doing a certain amount for 5 reps, and then the next week for 3 reps, like a 5-3-1 routine, but whatever. And then there's a totally different philosophy, right? The RPE, the perceived effort. Mm-hmm. And and I know that more and more strength athletes are being much more into the RPE style of training, where you literally go by feel. RPE 8, RPE 10, RPE 5. I mean, RPE 5, it's all like, how do you feel? What's your perceived effort that it's taking out?
And it varies. Like, every day is not always like,
Yeah.
The same weight might be an RPE of 9.
Yeah.
And then last week it was an RPE of 7 or whatever.
Exactly.
So it's like, so I mean, it really should come down. I mean, if somebody's very analytical and they like having a number or something tangible to kind of like shoot around for, I mean, of course, but I mean, it's still going to come down to, well, I thought this was an RPE of 8. Well, then why is it feeling like an RPE of 9 or 10 or whatever?
And then there's and then there is the other half of RPE, which is reps in reserve, which is however many reps you're doing. Do you have 2 reps in reserve? That means you stop before you feel like you have 2 reps left. There's so many of these different programming schemes. But that's aside. Let's go back into this discussion about recovery, because we went from like how our workouts feel to back to recovery. Just moving to me is, once you stop moving is when you're fucked. That's when shit starts going downhill. Is when you stop moving. If you're sore, keep moving. It just like obviously move slower.
Well, you mentioned. Well, you asked me what I like to use as far as like recovery wise, or what do I do or whatever. So what would you say you do to recover? You mentioned walking.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you particularly do?
So between walking and biking, that's the bulk of my recovery. And at the gym, I'll do a couple of things. That my elbow thing, my elbow's at 100% now at this point. By the way, for those of you who have been following my saga with my elbow,
yes.
And now it's just it's literally prehabbing before I do any push motions. I'll grab a band and I'll do get blood into my triceps, and everything's fine. But I have one hot water. Hot water next to opiates fixes all pain.
I mean, hey, it expands, right?
Hot water, I don't even know the mechanism of action, whatever. Hot water is everything. I love the heat. I know that back when we used to go to that one gym and they had the steam room and the sauna,
yeah.
Fucking
I still
love that shit. Heat to me is like, dear God, I will.
Naked old man sitting
Does it do anything? Is there evidence for it? Yeah, here and there, whatever.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel good, and that's.
I think that is like even the placebo is so
Yeah.
powerful. Like, Alan Thor also mentioned in that video, the mental aspect of you having a shitty day, you got in a fight with somebody or whatever. And that can take a toll on a person who, like, that shit was great last week, but this is just plaguing your mind, even though you're in the zone. And that can take a toll, but something that's going to make you feel better, sitting around in a sauna or whatever.
Yeah. And that's everything. And here is where, science-minded me throws all that shit out the window, and I'm like, you know what? If it makes you feel like it's working, then fuck it, it's working.
Because it seems to, right? Like,
can you prove it? No, but who gives a shit?
Well, maybe you can. Like, do you remember, at least like in your own experience, your anecdotal evidence, like after you went into a sauna and the following day when you hit the gym, did you feel better?
I felt better that day.
Yeah, so
Which
you know.
it,
I know
that's really,
it's not an absolute thing. Like, oh yeah.
I never kept track of it. I never was all like, okay, so after every workout, I'm gonna go to the gym, and after every workout, I'm gonna go to the sauna, and then next month, I'm not gonna go to the sauna, and I'm gonna see how my weights change. Like, no, I never did. It just made me feel good, you know,
Yeah.
and that's all that matters. Do I need evidence to show that? And sure, there's plenty about something about he and bringing blood vessels up and expand whatever. I don't whatever. The mechanism of action to me at this point is irrelevant. It made me feel good, so I did it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, and I think another thing we can kind of mention as far as recovery is because these products and things are in people's minds all the time because they're people are on social media, they're glued to their phones and computers and stuff, and they see all these products. So in their minds, especially if you're a newbie, that you have to. That's just the thing you have to do. Even if you go into the gym and you've been working out for months on end, and they might not even be working that hard. Like they might not even be, they don't necessarily be sore, but like their intensity level is not at a point where they're overtrained.
Right.
Right? Because that's another thing, I'm overtraining, right? Oh, I guess I should take a day off. I'm doing too much of this and that. But I feel like the normal person, I feel like there's just not enough of a perception of what is overtraining for them. So because of this, seed that's planted in their mind, they're like, okay, I guess I need to do this recovery, and that's where their results might suffer, is because there's just not enough of that extra effort.
Right.
Well,
I mean, recovery is something everybody needs to do.
Yeah.
But then, with Instagram and everybody's trying to sell a thing.
Products.
Recovery is free. Going for a walk is free. Taking a hot shower costs maybe 10 cents of electricity.
Right.
I'm getting there. It's if you're at the upper echelon of athlete, if you are an actual competitive athlete and you are at the top 1% of your sport and gold medals are won within fractions of a second, right? Competition lifts are made by 1 kilogram margins. By all means, that fractional benefit to expensive recovery shit like cryotherapy or whatever marginal, tiny, fractional benefit you might get from any of that shit, it matters there.
right.
When a marathon, or like an Olympic sprinter is literally winning a race by a fraction of a second, milliseconds of a difference.
Right.
At that point, yes, that tiny marginal benefit to your recovery and your training makes all the difference. To everybody else,
Yeah, like 99%
not
of
worth
people.
the money. Just not worth the money
Yeah.
at all.
Just stay moving.
Go
is-
for a
is
walk,
what I
man.
would say. Yeah,
Go
go for
for
a
a
walk. Burn some more calories, right? If you're looking to shed some body fat, right? So pay attention to your nutrition, because nutrition is part of that recovery process. So making sure that you are having that nutrition, right? What do you think about deloads, like deload weeks? Do you believe in deloads?
Yes. So here's the thing with deloads. They're so common in strength sports. They're programmed into almost every single contest prep. You have a peak week, and then you have a week or two of deloading, depending on which philosophy you subscribe to and who does your programming. And then, you're still training. You're just not... the whole idea is, right, you don't want to get injured 2 weeks out of a competition,
Yeah.
right? Right, that's the whole idea. You don't want to be hitting stupid weights a week before a competition and you fucking tear a tricep, and now there's your world's strongest man.
Curl
attempt
225 pounds with two
Right.
dudes.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking bullshittery. So deloads have their purpose. A lot of them in terms of like the practical applications of a deload week in actual true competition prep is injury prevention. A lot of people will take it easy right after a competition. They'll also deload for a little bit, just because your joints have been put under a lot of pressure the last couple of weeks, right? But as far as anybody else goes, unless you're a week out of a competition and it's programmed for you by a coach, or if you do your own programming, God bless you, or there's just no reason for it. I don't see why anybody would back off their training for the sake of backing off their training.
I agree. I think deloads. There's a little bit of a, even like unless you are training like from like a hypertrophy perspective. Let's just to kind of talk on the other spectrum. Like that training would have to be so intense where like you are like barely you're crawling out of the gym every single time you go into the gym. Like if that's the case and you start to feel like, oh man, my every time I do this bench press I feel like a shoulder impingement or some shit. Like if your workouts are that intense, I would feel like deload week you could benefit from. But if you're training with intensity but not to the point where you're just like literally spending hours and hours of just like beating yourself into the ground, I don't think most people will do that. I think that's, again, elite bodybuilders who are taking certain things to allow them to recover regardless to do that, and then they'll have some impressionable kid try to do that week in, week out. Maybe that kid might have to take a deload, right? But I mean, as far as deloads for me personally, I never felt really the need to, unless, again, like when I had my little knee thing where it felt a little weird. But even then, like I was still working out, and then the deload would have been on the leg day stuff,
right? Exactly.
So even then, I'm still moving, still very much moving.
Moving is everything. And there was one point that I wanted to make, and then it flew out of my head as soon as I went forward towards the mic. And and it's going back to what the super elite do, because it's their job. But hey, you know what? If you have spare money and you want to experiment and you want to be like, hey, I wonder if cryotherapy will help me out, or hey, I wonder if this massage thing will work, do it. Yeah. We're not telling you not to try,
right?
Yep. Go do it. If you have the money and you feel, again, all of recovery is, do you feel good? Do you feel better? Do you feel recovered? And you know what? The placebo effect, by all means, it's a thing. If you feel better, do it. If you're somebody who benefits from an ice bath, do it. If you've never tried, do it.
Right, exactly. Yep.
It's worth trying. And you know what? Sure, you spent $30 and you don't feel better. Great. Well, now you know not to spend that $30 on bullshittery again. You spent the $30 and you feel better. Congratulations. You feel better. Worth your money.
Right. I would say, as far as like a kind of an ending note on this, I would just say, just stay active with your recovery. I would say just be, when you are recovering and you decide you have a day that is a recovery day, just do stuff that still makes you active, that makes you moving. So whether it's dynamic stretching, doing mobility drills, doing cardio, some kind of like low impact thing that's going to allow you to recover over time. Those are the key things that everybody can do. Everybody.
Do you want to talk about what isn't recovery now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Because I just said go ahead and try it, do whatever. But let me tell you, like, the evidence for half the shit that people are trying to sell you for recovery is virtually non-existent, and if it's there, it's anecdotal or super marginal.
Yeah.
And again, if you're a top echelon of athlete, that margin makes a difference, but for the majority of us, not. Stuff like cryotherapy. Is there evidence that it works? Sure. Is that evidence overwhelming that it'll make a shit of a difference in your training or your life? God, no. Is it expensive? Yes, it is.
Yeah, those tubs. I mean, there's those tubs, even those like giant looking fish bowls or whatever are pretty expensive.
Yeah. So spending a whole bunch of money on things that may or may not work for you is not recovery. And I see people spewing this crap everywhere. And sure, sometimes it is the top athletes spewing it, and it's their right to do so. They're getting paid to do so.
Sponsorships and such.
Dear God, I will not judge you for being paid to be a spokesman for something. I
Sure.
get it. This is your job. You need to do it, right? But then there are people, like, I was watching Eddie Hall's video. He's like in his new house and he's showing off his cryotherapy chamber. He's not sponsored by it. He's not getting paid to do it. And I'm like, okay,
Red light
but
therapy.
you do realize that there are so many impressionable young people watching your video thinking that they can't be strong unless they do cryotherapy now. And I'm just like, oh, come on, dude.
I feel especially for somebody, anybody who's in that position, that does have that influence, right? An influencer to shift the mind and the thought of somebody who is very impressionable. You typically teenagers and people who are young are gonna watch these guys and be like, "Yep, guess that's it. That's what I need to do in order to be strong as fuck." And then they'll be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, and that's my favorite thing. It's all like, and they'll miss it completely. It'll be like a 3-hour long video about how I do red light therapy after my workouts, but then the focus should be on the work. If you want to get to that level, if you want to get to the level of these athletes, you need to put in the work.
But it's the
training,
the training and the
make or break.
the fundamental stuff.
Yeah, the fundamentals. And like nobody really focuses on the fundamentals. Maybe one day you and I will just actually start talking about fundamentals and like fundamentals of training.
I mean,
Yeah.
because
We'll
that's the thing that will give you over time that result. Because everybody's gonna skip over that, and that's the point of like just talking about those products and stuff, is that they're available for people because everybody has this instant gratification kind of mentality, right? Where it needs to happen yesterday, and then more specifically with like fitness stuff. So all these recovery products, it's like, I'm getting all fucked up because their training is just not up to snuff, and they're not training correctly. So that's why people like myself have jobs to make sure that you are indeed training correctly, and that yes, you are doing enough. No, you shouldn't be doing more, or vice versa, right? And that's important. That information is what you need to be successful. So, but yeah, I mean, like these products, everybody's buying these products, and the reason why is there's so many like mock versions of a lot of these products is because they know that people are going to buy them. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's fine. It's a market for it.
Sure.
You're more than welcome to capitalize on the misinformed or the stupid.
Yeah.
But then there are the things that do work, and they're realistically not that expensive. And by all means, like things like that vibrational shit with the guns. Like, sure, the expensive ones are worth a lot of money, but you can get a knockoff for like $20.
Yeah.
And you know what? They make you feel great. And by all means, do it.
Foam rollers.
Yeah.
I mean, like just basic stuff. Like when I've been looking into all this like physical therapy stuff, the most basic stuff like your bands and rollers and peanut, which is like I guess you could buy one nowadays where it's it used to be 2 lacrosse balls taped together, but stuff like that'll do wonders. Cheap stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's almost like recovery should not be expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't, and it isn't. So
wow, you actually
don't spend your money.
You actually just made a brilliant point. Like, what do physical therapists use? They use bands and foam rollers and otherwise
Your
relatively
body.
cheap shit. Like,
Yeah.
I saw a physical therapist for a few months because of a shoulder thing, because I can't feel my right shoulder, so whatever. But yeah, and now that there was nothing special there. They just knew how to correctly utilize movements and fucking dollar bands.
Like
Yeah.
not expensive at all. It's just then in moving it in a way that's gonna recover that specific area in that movement pattern.
Yeah, hop on YouTube. Like how to
Plenty of information.
How to do my shoulder hurts. What do I do?
10
Grab
videos.
a band and go for the best. Yeah, easy.
W's.
Yeah.
A bunch of exercises. But yeah.
The wall stuff.
Yeah,
Good shit.
prayer stretch. I mean, there's just a lot, depending on in what position your shoulder, because usually they'll test. Is it when you're internally rotated, externally, if you're extending over your head, in what positions are you feeling pain, and then just based on where you're feeling pain,
Flexion. Yeah.
here's a list of exercises you should be doing to strengthen whatever that might have been, a rotator or whatever it is. So, that's information's out there, and that's also free.
And then again, recovery is for soreness. If you're in pain, that's when you want to seek professional advice.
Yeah. I mean, so when just as like a typically, because that is a whole topic of actual injury and pain and stuff like that. You want to seek somebody who does know. Okay, my shoulder hurts. All right, here's a bunch of tests. Let's try this. You're feeling pain in these tests. Okay, so this is where you're feeling pain. So that's possibly A, B, or C. It's not A, B, and then go down the list and just figure it out.
Yeah, and you know what? And it's totally fine. Like you don't. If you're in pain, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to see like a medical doctor right away to get an X-ray or something like that.
Right.
See, talk to maybe a trainer in the gym, and they know more, right? They know more than the shady dude in the corner telling you shit, and they'll be like, okay, from what you tell me, I went down this checklist of things. This doesn't seem like a major issue. And I'm sure if something doesn't seem like a major issue, you would tell them. And if somebody comes up to you and what you diagnose is like, hey, listen, this is not something you see me for. You actually need to see a medical professional. Like somebody who knows more will tell you.
Because like if it's a tear, for instance, you might be able to do certain things that don't necessarily require surgery, where you just take time off. And like if it's severe, that's different. You might need to see a surgeon, and then you go through your physical therapy and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, more often than not, like very basic pains you can actually get around, as long as you understand how to do that, So yeah, recovery is key.
Recovery is key, and recovery is cheap. And
cheap
it comes
and free.
down to sleep well, eat good, and then do whatever
move
feels
often.
good. Yeah.
Eat, sleep well, move often.
Eat, sleep well, move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like we can summarize this entire episode as eat good, sleep well, and move.
Yeah.
Just don't stop moving. Dear
definitely.
God. Once you stop moving, that game over.
Holy triumvirate.
Game over.
Holy triumvirate.
Ah, yes. The triumvirate. Eat, sleep, move.
I guess I would say that does it for this episode. I think that's a way to sum up what we just said.
Am I even gonna pretend to start a rant that gets cut off?
Yeah, maybe this week we just don't. We don't rant this.
No,
week.
that's a fuck.